Europe is famous for its mild, temperate summers. But right now, with temperatures repeatedly blasting past 45 degrees Celsius, the continent is physically liquefying under the sun. The sheer intensity of this heat is breaking down one of the most advanced transportation grids on Earth. Solid iron railway tracks are suffering from thermal expansion, a process where metal swells and lengthens as it absorbs heat, causing heavy rails to warp and buckle right out of the gravel. Meanwhile, a desperate surge in air conditioning usage is triggering widespread power grid failures. Even more alarming, France has been forced to dial back its nuclear power production. The rivers they rely on to cool the reactors have become too hot to safely absorb the waste heat. This breakdown stems from a specific design philosophy. European infrastructure was engineered almost exclusively to trap heat and block out the cold. Now, that same high-efficiency design has left the entire continent physically defenseless against a cooling crisis it was never meant to handle. Normal social etiquette is completely breaking down. In Paris, citizens are ignoring strict city ordinances, leaping past barricades to swim in heavily polluted historical fountains and dirty urban canals just to lower their core temperatures. Because most European homes lack built-in air conditioning, people are resorting to bizarre indoor sheltering tactics. In several cities, massive crowds are flocking to air-conditioned IKEA showrooms, spending their entire afternoon sleeping on the display beds and sofas. In France, administrators are mixing water with a specific chalk powder called Blanc de Medan, painting the mixture over school windows. The thick white paste acts as a makeshift reflector, bouncing the harsh sunlight away from classrooms to bring the temperature down. Local media often praises these as clever new design solutions. But these exact tactics have been used to survive extreme heat for centuries in the developing world. In hot, arid regions like Rajasthan, India, residents have painted their roofs and homes in heat-reflecting blues and whites for generations. We are watching a wealthy, modern continent abandon its reliance on high-tech concrete architecture to survive, pivoting directly to the indigenous, low-tech survival hacks perfected by the very regions Europe once considered primitive. To understand why this is happening, look at this animated map showing the current weather pattern over the continent. A massive high-pressure system has migrated up from Africa and Spain, stalling completely over Europe. This creates a heat dome, physically blocking outward airflow and trapping rising hot air inside. As the system stalls, that high pressure acts like a lid, forcing the trapped air downward. The air compresses as it falls, heating up rapidly. Because the dome blocks fresh wind from entering, the continent essentially becomes a sealed convection oven. This local weather event is multiplying in severity due to a baseline shift in the Earth's climate. Because global warming has permanently raised the planet's average resting temperature, a standard wave of summer wind is now 3 to 4 times hotter and deadlier than it was 50 years ago. With baseline temperatures elevated and summer winds now 3 to 4 times more likely to reach lethal thresholds, these extreme patterns have become the predictable standard for the European continent.
The fundamental rule of climate science is that carbon dioxide doesn't dissipate quickly. It remains trapped in the atmosphere for centuries. The weather we experience today is directly dictated by the exhaust pumped into the sky hundreds of years ago. Scientists measure this through cumulative emissions, tracking the total amount of carbon a specific region has historically produced. And the massive spike in global carbon begins explicitly in 18th century Europe with the coal-fired engines of the Industrial Revolution. As European nations grew their wealth, they exported a highly specific economic model to the rest of the globe. They created the global blueprint for mass consumption, heavy concrete urbanization, and a total reliance on fossil fuels. To feed this industrial machine, European colonial powers methodically cleared vast stretches of native forests across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. In doing so, they destroyed the planet's natural carbon sinks, the very ecosystems designed to absorb and filter out carbon dioxide. Look at this chart comparing total historical emissions. Europe alone is responsible for nearly 25% of all cumulative global carbon emissions. That footprint dwarfs the historical emissions of entire continents, like Africa and South America combined. The carbon footprint Europe created to build its empires has remained in the atmosphere, fueling the heat dome currently baking its cities. The consequences are now rewriting the geography of the continent.
Italy's legendary Po River has dried up so severely that ocean salt water is flowing backward into the riverbed, poisoning vital agricultural farmland. As these rivers vanish, century-old hunger stones have broken the surface of the water. These rocks were carved by past generations to mark devastating historical droughts, serving as a bleak warning to anyone that famine was imminent. But the breakdown extends far beyond Europe. In the Antarctic, the massive Thwaites Glacier, often called the Doomsday Glacier, is fracturing. Warming ocean waters are carving deep channels underneath the ice, hollowing out a structure the size of Britain that holds back a massive rise in global sea levels. At the equator, the Amazon rainforest is losing its ability to act as the lungs of the Earth. Driven by intense heat and relentless agricultural clearing, vast sections of the jungle are drying out and burning, releasing carbon rather than absorbing it. These ecological collapses function as interconnected dominoes. As one failure accelerates the next, the global planetary system enters a cycle of failure that is moving much faster than initial predictions. The physics of the Earth are absolute. After centuries of unchecked industrial expansion, the natural cycle is forcibly reasserting itself over our artificial environments.
True survival moving forward requires rebuilding the ecological infrastructure we stripped away. Massive conservation campaigns like Calvary Calling in India are already proving that large-scale river and soil restoration is the most effective blueprint for cooling local climates and securing fresh water. The heat dome currently melting Europe reveals a stark reality. No amount of historical wealth or cultural prestige or concrete engineering can outsmart the basic laws of nature once the balance is broken.